Hey friends, welcome back. This is Ashley with Uncommon Roots Homestead. So the family and I just got back into town. We've been out of town for 5 days and we were visiting some friends down in Florida and we are back. My parents were actually farm sitting for us. So they made sure that everything stayed alive and they fed the animals and things like that. But I asked them not to give me garden updates because as much as I hate leaving town in the middle of garden season, it's crazy to me how much the space changes in just a matter of days. And so I knew that we had this trip and I really wanted to see how much change is gonna happen. So I have not taken a look at the garden yet, other than what you just saw, kind of looking from the outside. So I'm really excited to take you and show you what's happening in the garden now. We are in zone 7A, East Tennessee, and it is mid-July at this point. I think this is our 10th garden tour. We are getting right into harvest season. I have a couple of baskets with me today because we are definitely at the point where you cannot do a garden tour without baskets. I'm not sure how much my mom has been harvesting over the last couple of days, so we'll see what we get. Let's do it. So I don't usually start the garden tour over here, but I was just noticing these passion fruit flowers. Can you see this? Let me show you closer. How beautiful are those? I think that passion fruit flowers are some of the most beautiful flowers that you can find. They're absolutely gorgeous. They're so unique. Nothing else really looks like them. These roses look good. Looks like they just finished blooming, but the plant looks healthy. And my catnip looks great too. You can hear the kitties in there. Wouldn't be an Uncommon Roots Homestead garden tour if I didn't show you the beautiful naked trellis at the beginning of the tour. Now, I'm not gonna lie, a part of me thought maybe I'll come and something will be growing up the trellis, which is kind of ridiculous. But you know what I just was thinking about as I was looking at that passion vine that's trying to climb to the top of the garage? I might transplant one of the new seedlings from that because it spreads so much and it pops up everywhere. I might transfer some to this trellis because how gorgeous would that greenery be? And the flowers are gorgeous and it's edible. I might do that and it comes back every year. It kind of checks all of the boxes that I needed checked. These little blueberry plants are looking healthy. I'm actually seeing this this is just because it wanted more water, but it's such a young plant, I didn't bother. I want this plant to focus on sending its roots down so deep that it doesn't need to be watered, and it's still pretty healthy, so I didn't expect any fruit this year. But I need to go down after we get through the garden and see if we have any blueberries on the larger bushes. I have a ton of giant bumblebees joining me in the garden today, which is a great thing. I love extra pollinators in the garden, but also they're they're huge. They might be carpenter bees, but we don't have any wood over here, so that is why I'm not assuming carpenter bees. Also, I'm going through and picking out all of the blossom end rot fruit. I will give that over to the chickens. Such a bummer. You guys know I've been dealing with that. A lot of you asked to see a video on how we're going to treat the soil. Now, I am going to treat the soil, but it's not going to help this fruit. This fruit is not going to come back from blossom end rot. It's just going to add that nutrient back into the soil and hopefully prevent any of the future fruit that's going to set from getting it. And then it can also help in making sure that, next year, because we're not going to remove this soil, this is going to be the soil that's here next year, we'll just amend it. I'm just helping to kind of regulate it before we go into the next season. This is classic hornworm damage. I grabbed a bunch of hornworms right before we left, so I'm thinking that that damage was already here, but you never know. With this many tomato plants, I've probably got a few more lurking around. I was headed back into the garage to grab my pruners, my ground cherries. All right, so my tomatoes here are out of control. They are definitely in need of a pretty serious prune. I told you guys how I'm pruning my tomatoes this year. I am not being militant about pruning down to a single leader. I didn't do that. I let a couple kind of develop and set fruit, and I've just been trying to keep them clean to keep the disease down. Now, there are a lot of different ways to grow tomatoes, so don't let anybody tell you that there's only one way, because there's not. And they're all gonna have different levels of effectiveness, and they're all gonna serve different purposes. And so if you are growing a market garden to sell and provide for your family financially, then you need to choose the route that's gonna be absolutely most effective to get you the most fruit at the best size, and you know, at the end of the day, have the least disease and get you the furthest. If you are splitting your time between work and a garden, or, you know, doing a couple of different things that you've committed to, maybe you need to give yourself a little bit of grace and not worry about getting out to the garden every single day to prune. That's kind of the boat that I'm in, right? I know that I don't have the time to commit to tending to 60 tomato plants at the level I would need to tend to get them to be like these beautiful, perfect, very clean single stalks of, you know, great bunches of really healthy, large fruit. Instead, I'm letting the garden go a little wild this year, and that's my prerogative, and that's totally fine. And if you're in that boat, that's awesome. And if you're not in that boat and you are, you know, delicately pruning and attending to a few tomato plants, or maybe a ton of tomato plants, then good for you. I'm so proud of you. But, you know, not the season that I'm in. We don't live here. We have a lot going on. So my tomatoes are wild, is what it is. Okay, so I just got 2 of the Brad's Atomic Grape. They feel pretty good. They're good. I grew them last year. They're not my favorite, but they do have a different taste. They're almost a little bit hoppy. I like them. It's not my favorite tomato. I really like a yellow tomato. I think I told you guys that. I like a sweeter tomato. Those champagne tomatoes from my gardener, I will grow 10 of those plants next year because they are so good. Sorry, you guys caught me humming. Aw, man. So when this happens, and this looks like it just happened, we got a lot of rain while we were gone. There are no bugs in this. It's not scabbed over yet. I'm gonna put it in the basket and we're gonna eat it. To each their own. That fruit is tricky back there. Those bees keep like swinging past me and scaring the crap out of me. Is what it is. All right, so with that being said, I am by no means done taking care of these tomato plants, right? Like, I am not pruning them religiously, but I still need to come out and prune them. I need to make sure they're tied up. We did have that big storm roll through, and I'm seeing quite a bit of, you know, damage where they've kind of fallen off the trellis and they get heavy with fruit and they start to fall. So I am gonna come back through, do some cleaning up. I need to do some pruning, but the way that I kind of approach it is instead of coming out and pruning, you know, every couple days, I'm pruning 3 to 4 times a season. And so it's basically when it gets to this point where I'm starting to see a little bit of damage and like disease and kind of it's getting too full again, then I know I need to come back out with my pruners. And I do make sure to keep everything tied up because the risk that you have when you have multiple leaders is that maybe when you first tie up your tomatoes, you have one really strong leader and then just like some little stubs that don't need as much support. Well, as those grow and set fruit, you're gonna end up with really heavy branches and multiple of them. So they kind of like go, if you have one and it's tied up, if it gets heavy, it can just pull this way. If you have three, they're gonna start pulling like this and they're gonna snap your plant. So you have to make sure that you're really good about tying your plants up. I bought these clips off Amazon. I shared them in a different video. I really like them. I'll probably order some more. I didn't end up having enough for this size garden, but that's kind of the route that I'm going this year. Also, this is like the bane of my existence. I saw this from the top and was like, oh my gosh, how wonderful. Why? So I say why, hypothetically. Blossom end rot is most commonly caused by a lack of calcium in the soil, but it can also be caused by irregular watering. I think it's probably a combination. Based on other damage I'm seeing in the garden, I do think that this compost was lacking calcium, but I also know that we had a really wet early spring and then we had 4 weeks of drought, and then we didn't have running water here, so the plants weren't really getting watered regularly, and now we're in a wet season again, so it's kind of been all over the place in terms of watering, which can definitely contribute to this. Also, you do want to make sure if you're dealing with something like blossom end rot that you're taking that fruit off. It's not contagious. Your other fruit isn't going to catch it, but those tomatoes are sucking all the water from your plant and they're taking energy to develop and turn, and ultimately you're not going to be able to eat them, or I wouldn't. So, pro tip, take them off. Okay, I got distracted looking over here and I found my first cucumber. So my cucumbers have just not taken off this year. They really never do. I don't know that I've ever successfully grown cucumbers, maybe ever. So pretty excited about this guy. So like I said, these cucumbers have definitely been slow growing this year. I don't know why exactly. It could be a number of things, but not giving up. I got a cucumber, which in my book is a win. Again, it all depends on what you're growing for, right? For me, I am growing to learn and feed my family and really experience nature in a new way and appreciate the sacrifice that comes with our food and what we eat. And there's a lot of freedom in that definition. Now, if you're growing for different reasons, it could be different. And something like a bad cucumber year could be detrimental, but you got to take everything as it comes, right? You can't control it. So if you're having a bad cucumber year and they're just not growing, there's not much that you can do to change that. So my advice is to just learn from what's happening. Do a lot of research, do a lot of Googling, make sure that you understand maybe what about your environment might have been off to make that not grow well, and then take it as a learning opportunity and apply it next year. Also, if anybody else gets itchy in the garden, it is normal. So I get like contact dermatitis really easily in the garden. The plants do it. A lot of the time, like in the height of harvest season, I'll actually wear long sleeves in the garden just to keep my arms from getting all itchy and kind of splotchy. I don't know if you can see it from there. There are a lot of different things in a lot of different plants that can cause you to itch. So it's different for everybody. It's basically just a contact dermatitis or like low allergic reaction to something in the plant. I get it. So if you have a slight reaction and you feel like, oh, I'm not gonna be able to garden, you can garden. Wear long sleeves, take precautions, wear gloves if you need to, or just tough it up if it's not, severe. Obviously, if it's severe, talk to your doctor. Okay, so this is my bed of succession planted tomatoes, and they are ready to be trellised. I'm actually gonna have Kevin come out this week and get a trellis going for these guys. But they're also producing fruit. It's tiny. These are those sun sugar, which, they're my favorite. But they're getting big so fast. That's one of the benefits of succession sowing, is that if you're growing something that likes it hot, you're like already into the heat of summer. Now tomatoes like it warm, but once it gets really, really hot, like here in the next couple weeks, like into August, they're gonna stop liking it, and that's usually where I hit my peak production, and then they all start dying. So it's odd to me because tomatoes in our climate have such a long growing season. The succession plants do well. They do a lot better than the first run when it gets a little bit warmer. There's some kind of critter behind me. But anyways, all of that to say, I need to come and get these trellised up. We're gonna do the same thing that Kevin did over on these and use our extra field fencing and some T-posts and just quickly trellis them up, and then I will get pruning. So these are those champagne tomatoes, and we're getting a lot of them now. Good night. These bugs are huge. It's like a pterodactyl coming out of the plant. Like, I don't know where all of these bees are coming from. I'm glad, like I said, I'm glad that they're here. I want them to come pollinate the garden, and I want this to be a pollinator friendly space. But when you've got these like huge bumblebees or like the carpenter bee size bees, like they come in hot. Look at all of those. I am definitely seeing a lot of hornworm damage as I am harvesting some of this fruit. I take this one a little bit early. So once a fruit has started to blush, you can go ahead and pick it. It will ripen on your counter. It definitely tastes better when you let it ripen on the vine, but I know myself, and I know it might be a while, a couple days, I mean, not a long time, but a couple days before I'm back out here, and so I'd rather harvest it now so that it doesn't go bad. Anyways, I'm gonna have to get back out here and do a little bit more hornworm hunting because they are coming in hot here. I'm actually not seeing a ton. I would take care of them as I came across them. But I'm not looking for them, and so they're really easy to miss if you're not like specifically looking for them. And I've been known to be harvesting and totally like touch them and not even realize until later because they blend right in and I'm focusing on the fruit. But do you see classic hornworm? Like, look at this. He's here somewhere. He is definitely here, but I don't know where. Now, usually when you start to see damage, you can just look at the surrounding leaves and you'll find him, but sometimes if it's been a while and we've been out of town, and that is not something my parents would help with. They are not hornworm fighting kind of people. I mean, he could be anywhere at this point, so I'll come hunt him later. So I definitely struggle with excess mentality. And what I mean by that is that I always think I'm not gonna have enough of anything that I'm doing. So if I'm like cooking dinner for friends, I make way too much because I'm afraid I won't have enough. If I'm planting something like cherry tomatoes, I plant way too many plants because I'm afraid that we just won't have enough. I think that it's because we come, like Kevin and I both come from Italian families, and so there's just like, there's always excess. I don't know, but as I'm sitting here harvesting all these cherry tomatoes that are ripe right now, I'm like, might have gone like a touch overboard. We are a family of 4. We're gonna have to make something with cherry tomatoes, which sometimes what I'll do is actually roast a bunch of cherry tomatoes and then pack them in oil and put them in the fridge, and then we'll eat them for like months, and that's delicious. They're really great on like eggs and things like that. Roasted tomatoes are always delicious, and cherry tomatoes roast really well. So I do get a little bit nervous when I'm like all up in these plants trying to harvest tomatoes from the very back, because I like, hornworms are not going to hurt a human. They aren't gonna like bite you or anything. They don't sting. Like, they're not gonna hurt you, but they are disgusting. And I do not like bugs. So I don't like snakes. I don't really like bugs. I love to garden. I love to be outside. Sometimes those things are in conflict with each other, right? Like, bugs and snakes live outside. The garden lives outside. So I'm going to have to, if I want to love one, I have to come to terms with the others. But I can't think about it as I'm like sticking my whole body into a tomato plant, especially when they're a little bit wild like mine are right now. Can't think about it as I'm like sitting here telling you about it, which makes me think about it. So there's that. Okay, so what I was talking about earlier with making sure you tie up your legs, this is why. So see right here, when this fell over, it's threatening to just split. And this is healing itself. It actually looked like it did split a little bit, and the plant is working on healing itself. Now, tomato plants are resilient. They will heal themselves in a lot of situations. But my perspective is that I would rather prohibit that from happening, because when a plant is trying to save itself, it's going to put all of its energy into saving itself and not into, creating fruit that I want to eat. So taking this off, I'm going to tie everything else up. Not today, but I'm going to do it. I'm also like queen of leaving my pruners in the garden somewhere. I like set them down and then I need them and I can't find them, and it is the worst. So I'm trying to get better at it. I also don't have like a consistent place I put them in the garage, which is a whole nother story. So this bed is the bed that we just harvested onions from. I need to weed it, and then I'm gonna mulch it really good, and then I'm just gonna let this bed rest, because we're gonna put garlic in this bed in, a month and a half. So in Zone 7A, East Tennessee, usually people are planting garlic in like October, some even plant it into November. I like to plant my garlic in mid-September. So it's like the earliest that people would usually plant garlic. But what I found is that when I plant it in mid-September, it's ready to harvest in early May. So I get that bed space back way sooner. So I don't have to like sacrifice beds to garlic in the spring and the fall. I just do it in the fall. It works for me. If you're in a different zone, different climate, it's gonna depend. The biggest thing that I run into is that because it's warm still in September, the garlic does grow, but because we don't get really severe winters here, it doesn't hinder it. Like, it picks right back up after it goes dormant. So I haven't had issues from it, but take that into consideration. If you're considering growing it a little bit earlier, you want to make sure that your temperatures aren't going to get so cold that any new growth is going to completely die back, because then basically you're just making the garlic do everything twice. But for me, everything stayed pretty green and healthy throughout the entire winter, even though we get some freezes. It freezes here, but it doesn't drop below 0 degrees. So the way that the zones work, the USDA zones, they're used in the US and places in Canada to track how cold it gets. It's not actually like when it gets cold, it's just how cold it gets. So in zone 7, that means we don't get below 0 degrees Fahrenheit. So most things that are cold tolerant are okay and perennial in our zone, and garlic is part of that too. So garlic wants to go dormant, it wants to be cold, and so you want to grow it through the winter. But if you're in a zone that gets too cold, if you let it grow before it goes into that dormancy, you run the risk of it dying and actually having to like work backwards to get back to where it needs to go. All right, I am over here because I saw this beauty and I want to harvest it. So a harvesting pro tip: if you are using one basket for multiple different things, make sure you don't smush all your tomatoes. So if you're harvesting big tomatoes that you want to sell or something, you actually don't even want to stack them. With cherry tomatoes, I just kind of throw them all in the bucket. But I won't put anything heavy on top of any type of tomato. So an eggplant is fine because they're really light, but I try to use a new basket. So pro tip. Speaking of getting another basket, I'm gonna grab one right now because I want to harvest some herbs to dry and make an Italian seasoning blend. So I've got a few different types of oregano here. I'm gonna harvest a little bit. I probably won't harvest anything off that because he's it's so tiny. But I'm gonna harvest some of this one that's going to seed, and then I'm gonna harvest some of the golden as well. I've been trying to protect it, but I'm gonna harvest some, and then I'm gonna grab some thyme, and I'm gonna go over to the herb bed. There's nothing better than fresh herbs. Like, I don't think there's anything better. Got sidetracked again feeding Robin, but look at the size of those bees. Do you see them? My little garden kitty came back over, so I had to give him some food. Back to harvesting my herbs. I underestimated how many herbs I was gonna cut and how big of a basket I need, but this basil is absolutely stunning. I am gonna make a ton of pesto tonight because when you have a bunch of basil, you make a ton of pesto. You come with me, buddy? You show him the garden? Come on, Robin. I may or may not, at this very moment in time, as I'm trimming basil and spending a ton of time in the herb garden, be procrastinating that. Those are our production tomatoes, and they are beastly right now. They need a lot of love. Somebody asked me on a post on Instagram that I posted about how many baskets we have, why we hoard baskets. And at first I laughed because I don't feel like we're hoarding them. But then I felt like, you know, if people knew how many baskets we use on a day in, day out basis, like right now I can't find another large basket, and we own a ton of baskets. I'll take a small one. We have a huge garden and we harvest a lot of food. Woohoo! Did you see that? I swear these bees are huge. I need big baskets. Consolidating, and I'm gonna move my rejects into a smaller basket for the chickens. Now I can can use this one. The asparagus is looking great. This bed really needs to be weeded. I will do that at some point. And our peppers are looking good. It is about time for me to come through, start looking to see if there's anything to harvest, which it looks like there are. This one's got a, oh, those bugs. Okay, so I just realized that there are a ton of bees, but the big buzzing I'm hearing is like this giant beetle. I don't even know what it is. I'll try to get a picture if I see it still again. I love the garden. I love the garden. I love the garden. Okay, my potatoes, they have all come up. They're in dire need of hilling up. I'm actually going to be doing that tomorrow, and I'm going to bring you guys with me. But I got my potatoes in really late. So potatoes usually take about 100 days. A lot of people are harvesting potatoes right now because they got them in early. I'm the opposite end of that. So I will be harvesting them probably in like late September, early October. You just want to harvest them. Some people say after a first freeze, but I'm going to do it right before the first freeze. You guys, look at what I just saw. How gorgeous is that? Look how big that is. Wow, these are stunning. That is a dahlia variety. I don't know what the variety is, but it is beautiful. All of these are gorgeous. Okay, I could not help myself. Look at this. How gorgeous. So I've got the dahlias. I grabbed some eucalyptus. I've got this aster. Stunning. Now I'm gonna actually have to stop procrastinating and hurry up so that these don't die before I get them home and get them in water. It's time to conquer the beast. Okay, so this jungle absolutely needs love. It needs pruning, it needs tying up. It is a mess. I just let it get too far away from me. This is not what I'm going for, right? Like this is outside of the philosophy, the loose philosophy that even I am taking. And when it gets to be like this, it becomes very overwhelming because there's just so much going on. I mean, I can't even see, it's so dense. I can't even see most of the fruit, let alone harvest it. So that's gonna be on the list. We've gotta get this under control because I don't wanna lose all this fruit. This is our production fruit. We need to handle this. But beyond that, look at this. Those are sweet potatoes. My squash has just taken off. I am sure that there are zucchini in there to be harvested. It is just wild. My artichokes here look really good. I need to get in here and weed this bed. But I'm probably not gonna take you guys all the way deep into there. I'm wearing boots, but not tall enough for my liking. Let me take you to the other side and see what we can see. We are getting to the point where the trellis, that Tramontino squash, is climbing and it's starting to set fruit up here, which is gonna be so cool when those start to hang down. I am letting one of the Tramontino squash turn into winter squash, or I was gonna try to. It actually looks like it's starting to like, I don't know, maybe I'll harvest it. I'm going back and forth. I want to see how big it'll get, but it's like starting to crowd other plants pretty severely, which I don't want. So maybe I'll go ahead and cut him. This is madness. Like absolute madness. I'm not even sure. I see so much squash. I think I gotta go. I'm like trying to find the best entry point to get to where I'm going. Now I see why people do their squash in like a totally separate field where it doesn't even come close to being near everything else. It's gotten out of control. If you cannot tell, I have retreated to my car and driven back to our house because it started pouring out of the middle of nowhere. So I didn't finish the garden tour. There were still some things I wanted to do, but I think you got the gist of it. You saw the jungle that's happening in the back. it is always so crazy to me how much change can happen over a matter of, 4 to 5 days. Right now, the July garden is like growth times 1,000. I'm going to be back out there tomorrow hilling the potatoes. I'll bring you with me, show you kind of what I'm doing for that. And I will show you the rest of the garden that we didn't get to see today. But I wanted to thank you for joining me today. You always have a space in my garden, and I hope that together we are learning and growing and accepting our wins and our failures for what they are. Until next time, friends.